Is it storming where you're at?
Yeah.
It's nuts out here.
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, we might lose power. Who knows? So,
Yeah, it's windy and shit.
yeah. Um, all right. So let's jump into this. All right. Hey there, film buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I'm your temporary host, Paul.
What's up, everybody? I'm Nick. Back at it
And
again.
there we go. And we're going to be continuing on kind of our theme from last week, which was James Gunn. So last week we covered his sort of big, you know, popular franchise films, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and the new release, The Suicide Squad. You can check that out, of course, wherever you're listening to this if you haven't already. But this week we're doing his early stuff. We're doing his first directorial effort, Slither, and then we're following that up with his weird first superhero movie, Super, which I watched today for the first time, and boy, what a ride!
I watched it last night.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Man should be in jail.
So that's kind of what we have on the slate for you. We're also going to talk about some news that's come up recently, and we also will talk about some stuff that we've been watching. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and we've got a clip for Slither. So let's go ahead and give it a listen.
When you marry someone, you promise to love them forever.
Baby.
No matter how much they might change.
Brian? Baby, what happened to your face?
It's just a bee sting.
From Universal Pictures
Tree is sick or something?
comes a film so shocking,
We got a real problem here.
so disgusting,
Don't let him in your mouth!
it will change the face of horror.
Marriage is a sacred bond, for better or worse.
Much worse.
All right, so Slither came out in 2006. It runs an hour and 35 minutes. It's rated R. It is written and directed by James Gunn, and it stars Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, Michael Rooker, Greg Henry, Sean Gunn, and it also has, oh my God, I'm blanking on her name, Pam from The Office.
Jenna Fisher.
There we go. Thank you. So Slither is, billed as a horror comedy, and it's definitely kind of like a send up to movies like The Thing, and some Cronenberg films. He has talked about some of the influences of the film before. And it was, something that he was coming off the heels of having written the Scooby-Doo film, the first one, and he had also written a small film for a studio called Troma Studios. But this was his first real sort of chance at the helm. And Nick and I actually recently watched this one together for the first time. Nick, would you like to share your thoughts with the audience?
Yeah, so out of the two movies we're talking about today, Slither and Super, I prefer Slither. I think Slither was a lot of fun. It's very, you mentioned that he worked for a Troma studio, and for those that don't know, Troma is famous for their really B movie kind of low budget, hyper violence kind of schlock. And that influence I feel like has stuck with Gunn forever. It's most obvious, I guess, in those first couple films like Slither and Super, but it's still there. It's still prevalent in Guardians of the Galaxy and obviously with the R rating for Suicide Squad, it's in full blast there for sure. So Slither, first off, I want to say that Greg Henry as the mayor in this movie is one of the funniest performances I've ever seen in my life in any movie. He's amazing. It was cool. I don't think it's like amazing or anything, but it's fun.
Henry steals every scene that he's in.
Yeah, it's the same in Super. Greg Henry's also in Super, and I mean he shows everybody up anytime he's on screen.
For those who don't know, from his bigger stuff, Greg Henry was the grandfather in Guardians of the Galaxy in the opening sequence with young Peter when he's with his mother in the hospital. But I think that he absolutely steals this whole thing. It's not often that you get to see Nathan Fillion really just get to be the lead in anything, just full on authentically anymore.
It's shit. No, I talked about this when we were watching it. I like that James Gunn. Yeah, there's always these filmmakers that really understand certain actors and how to use them. So with James Gunn, you've got his brother Sean Gunn, obviously, and all of his stuff. You've got Michael Rooker. Michael Rooker this is my favorite Michael Rooker performance that I've seen out of his stuff. Also in Slither, he's so good. he plays the main villain. He becomes the guy that becomes infected with the alien.
He's the one that becomes the Cronenberg.
Parasite, whatever you want to call it, monster. Where was I going with this? Nathan Fillion also in all of his stuff. Sylvester Stallone in most of it. Sylvester Stallone's not in these first couple movies, but and that said, I do love that Nathan Fillion is just like a straight man lead in this. But it's also kind of like it's a very like square character.
Yeah.
That there's not much to Nathan Fillion's character in this movie. He's the good guy.
Yeah, he's sort of the straight man of the whole movie. He gets his zingers in there every once in a while, of course, because he is the lead. He has to. But he bears the brunt of having to try and be like the likable shucksy doodle sheriff kind of. But I think he actually manages to pull it off. I think this is before there was kind of that persona of him as almost like a pseudo Shatner kind of figure, from all of his arrogant roles that he played and stuff like that. And so this is before all that, and I think he does a great job. I think he does a great job with it. Michael Rooker does a tremendous job.
Something funny is that Michael Rooker's character's name is Grant. His first name is Grant, and his last name is Grant.
Oh God, this is why sometimes it's funny to read a script because so rarely like a character's full name gets said or written down, and there are oftentimes like little jokes and puns and things like that scattered all throughout. Actually, several of the names, if I'm not mistaken, are meant to be like Easter eggs. I think it's the mayor's name is like the combination of two Kurt Russell character names. So, no, I think that it's
Jack McReady. Ridiculous. It's a ridiculous movie. It's very, very gross. There's like crazy body horror.
And it's incredibly practical. Like this is a movie back in 2006, so they're having to do things a lot more practically. And it really pays off. Everything feels dripping and gross and nasty and disgusting.
It looks great. It really looks great. There wasn't any real effect in the movie where I was like, that didn't age well or that looks iffy. I think it looks great.
I was looking at the director's commentary on. I didn't get this movie on disc. I really wanted to, but I couldn't get it in time. And so I was reading up on the director's commentary that's in the Shout Factory limited release, and it's apparently like the deer thing that attacks Nathan Fillion. That's like his least favorite practical effect of the whole movie.
Because it was like difficult to do, or just because they don't like
because
it?
of how it turns out. James Gunn thinks that it just looks terrible. He thinks that it looks like a weird Muppet. And then, but you know, I think that for the most part, everything looks great. You know, it is gross, and it obviously does have that kind of like David Cronenberg aesthetic. You know, like The Fly and stuff like that, where it's this gross.
Oh, some thunder going on.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. It's really storming over here, folks. Who knows? There might be an interruption or.
We're just getting in the mood. It's a horror movie.
Yeah, that's right. And honestly, on a certain level, so is the next one. But I think
maybe more so.
Yeah, I think that the movie did great. You know, unfortunately, it had a budget of about 15 million, and globally, it only grossed about 12 million on release. So it definitely was like a wah-wah at the box office.
Yeah. It's hard to sell. Both this and Super, and I know we'll get into Super later. Super did even worse at the box office.
Yeah,
but both of those movies are very hard sell to general audiences. I was reading up on Slither, and it just said, like, especially at that time in 2006, horror comedies just were not a really prevalent thing at the moment. And 2006, this is like the Saw era. This is the post 9/11 like torture porn, like extreme, dour kind of stuff. So something like Slither, which is a lot goofier and gross, not really in like it's not like hyper realistic violence, or and horror. It's just like nasty, gooey stuff.
What's so interesting, you mentioned that horror comedy wasn't as prevalent at the time. 2004 is Shaun of the Dead, and so
well, that's also a different, with that being the UK and everything.
True.
But that's a good point.
It just didn't regardless. It just didn't hit a certain zeitgeist. It just managed to miss out.
Is Shaun of the Dead rated R?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got nothing then. So Slither's something. Slither's fun, but it's no Shaun of the Dead. I mean, no. So there's that as well.
No, yeah, Shaun of the Dead is a very specific type of experience, and it's very carefully curated and cultivated. Not saying that Slither wasn't to a certain extent, but also, he apparently did pick the people that he ended up going into work with for distribution and production, because they were willing to give him a full budget and give him, the time that he needed to get started on it immediately.
Yeah.
So he was definitely working on this, pretty quickly. So, it unfortunately didn't end up working out. But I think that it's definitely obviously had cult classic sort of status, which I think is also why Shout Factory ended up doing their sort of special release, is because it has sort of hit that cult acclaim.
I think both Slither and Super are both on Amazon Prime Video right now. I know Super is. I watched Super last night on Amazon Prime Video. I can check like right now, and it will tell me. No, it's not. I lied to you guys. Slither's not on there. Sorry, you got to pay to watch Slither. Super's free right
now. But I think it's great overall. I even think I think Elizabeth Banks does a good job here. I can sometimes find her a little bit more distracting a presence, but again, this is kind of earlier Elizabeth Banks, where she sort of blends in a little bit better to the whole thing.
to add on to that also, this Slither apparently takes place in South Carolina, and we noted that those accents are not South Carolinian.
Yeah, let me tell you what.
And Elizabeth Banks is the more predominant, because Michael Rooker, at least that's like kind of just his natural voice.
Yeah, that's just sort of Michael Rooker.
Just how he talks.
He doesn't change how he speaks.
Yeah. Nathan Fillion's accent is a little subtler. Elizabeth Banks has to really go for it, and it kind of like goes away, or I don't know, maybe I just got used to it, but I feel like it kind of went away as the movie kept going.
Right at the final thoughts moment. So Nick, what are your final takeaway notes? If you had to tell listeners one final thing about Slither.
A final thing about Slither. So first off, this is going to be two things. Sorry. Well, I already mentioned, but I think it's pretty fun. I think it does need mentioning that there are some, I don't want to say dated, because it's still like, it's just not all right. There's still some jokes at like the expense of others that, like, they, what do we call it? Like they hit low or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't have that right. You know what I'm talking about.
Off-color humor, perhaps, might be a good way to put it. Or I mean, some
like
verbally
the
abusive humor.
The easiest term is like offensive, but the word offensive has become like such like a loaded, like, oh, you're offended, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
it's kind of lost its meaning.
No, I get
to
that.
me at least. I can't remember any specifics. The more specific ones I remember are in Super, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's much worse.
Let me tell you, if there is anything in Slither that is, sort of offensive, or sometimes I say hasn't aged well, buckle up for Super. So
okay, your final thoughts on Slither.
I think Slither does a great job of doing exactly what it wants to do. James Gunn clearly wanted to make a movie that was exactly like the movies that he enjoyed growing up watching, and in particular the creature movies, the sort of, something from out of space, some parasite or what have you, that infects and spreads and causes mayhem and is this sort of bodily, grotesque thing. And that's clearly what he wanted to do, and he absolutely hit it out of the park. Like it sort of ended up coming, he did it so well that it ended up coming with a lot of the baggage of that genre as well. It's not like he really wrote his way out of some of the tropes of that genre. But it's a really great experience, and like it's a great example of that kind of movie, and also shows that like it still holds up even now as filmmaking.
As like a small add-on and everything, this is a spoiler, if it's okay to mention a spoiler.
Of course.
I like that he at least, in a number of ways, he like keeps things unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it plays out, kind of standard on the whole, they're like small beats that I feel like are different that can still catch you off guard. So in particular with that, I like the setup with the grenade. How he's like, oh, they have this grenade, like, remember that they have the grenade, I'm sure that'll come back, and it does, and then it's like rendered completely useless. Like you think, oh, the grenade's going to be the thing that saves the day, that's going to be what blows up the monster, and instead, it is not at all.
No, not at all, not even remotely.
I appreciate it, kind of, that kind of joke.
No, yeah,
a long con.
That great reversal, So out of 5, Nick, what would you give Slither?
I'd probably give Slither a 3. I don't know if that sounds harsh, but 3 is, to me, it's good.
No, yeah. I'll give it a 4.
I mean,
You
it,
know,
it does, it's like you said, it does what it is trying to do,
yeah.
and that's what it's all
And
about.
it's also a great movie to watch with others, especially like, people who maybe aren't
Oh,
familiar with it or something like that. It's a
oh, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely recommended that you watch this with a friend or two.
yeah. Um,
Some
so
substances,
moving on, our next movie for you is James Gunn's Super, which came out I think 4 years later. But we
Yeah.
do have a clip, so take a listen.
Frank.
I knew I was losing her.
Excuse me. Have you seen my wife?
I don't think she wants to see you anymore.
Sarah!
Don't touch my car again.
I'm going. That's not the kind of touching I meant.
Jock, he stole my wife. Can you arrest him?
Sometimes it's better just to accept these things.
Batman, batarang, pipe bombs, utility belt.
Utility belt.
Green Arrow has a bow and arrow.
Okay.
Why do you need all those?
I'm making up my own superhero. He needs a weapon.
That'll do.
Cool.
All it takes to be a superhero is the choice to fight evil.
So, like I said, Super came out in 2010, written and directed by James Gunn, and it stars Rainn Wilson, Elliot Page, Liv Tyler, Kevin Bacon, Greg Henry again, Michael Rooker again, Sean Gunn, with cameos by Linda Cardellini and Nathan Fillion, who were also, multiple time collaborators of Gunn. So,
Yeah.
I guess you started on Slither. I guess
Yes.
I'll start on Super.
Sure. Do we want to? Do we ever outline the plot?
Sure. Like we can. Oh yeah. So Henry normally does that. I completely forgot to do that for Slither. I'll have to figure out how to do that. So Super. Thank you, Nick. That's very
Yeah,
helpful.
you're welcome.
So Super is about Frank Darbo, a man whose wife falls under the influence of a drug dealer, and he transforms himself into the Crimson Bolt, a superhero with the best intention but lacking in heroic skills. That's some of the official synopsis.
That's that's underselling things quite a bit
That is
as to what this thing is.
That's maybe, I think, one of the most hysterically underselling it synopses I've ever heard, ever read, ever. That makes it sound like a very bad poor man's copy of Kick-Ass, and I guess to a certain extent kind of, but this movie goes off the rails.
This movie got compared. It came out around the same time. I don't remember what time exactly Kick-Ass came out, but obviously there were comparisons to Kick-Ass, in that it's two movies about what if someone really tried to become a superhero? Doesn't have any superpowers in the quote unquote real world.
Yeah.
What would it be like? And they're both hyper violent also.
Yeah. But this one I would say more so than the Kick-Ass movie is more like the Kick-Ass comic, where things, instead of turning out well, have pretty much every dire, sad, horrific outcome come to fruition that could possibly happen for a lot of these characters along the way.
Yeah, it's weird because I like Kick-Ass quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually seen the second one, but I do like that first. From what I remember, I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember liking Kick-Ass a lot. And when those characters would get hurt, it was oh my god, it was very, very serious.
Yeah.
This movie, it kind of has that. I don't. It's not quite as compelling to me.
No.
I guess because it is a bit more absurd.
Yeah.
And off the rails and unhinged.
It's not,
there had to have been some kind of not fantastic drug on that set.
Yeah. So to give a little context, Frank Rainn Wilson, the lead's journey, it's not just that he becomes a sort of good guy superhero. What ends up happening is he becomes truly like he is like a mentally unwell man. Like he's troubled, he's prone to visions, and he's had a very traumatic life leading up to this point. And essentially, like, you start a lot of the movie in this kind of fun, darkly funny space where you're watching this guy do the kind of things that you would expect from the premise. Promised. Man fights crime, and you watch Rainn Wilson tackle a drug dealer and try and beat him up and not do it well. And then you see him use a wrench.
For context, most of the time he uses a wrench, just straight up just smacks people in the face. And it does what would happen if you got smacked in the face with a metal wrench.
Yeah. And, for a large part of it, especially during that montage of when he's first using the wrench and beating people up, you see a little bit of the damage done, but it's done in this way that's very heroic montagey, and you don't really quite exactly see what the aftermath and the damage is on everyone. And then the movie takes a real turn for me. The moment that I knew that this was going to a different place was probably like the line butter scene, where he goes and spoilers, I guess, follow ahead a little bit from here.
Yeah.
But there's no way to talk about this movie without the spoilers. Like,
no,
we gotta
there's
address...
not. You have to talk about the whole pie here. So if you care at all about spoilers,
yeah, I guess
about Super, then don't listen.
Let me put it like, how about we do this? My general overall review of Super is this, without getting into spoilers. I think it is a deranged, weird, fantastical little look into this man's mind and where he was at a very particular time in his life. And I also think that it's funny in its own way, and it's very compelling, and it has a lot of good and interesting things to dissect and look at and discuss. But it is not for everyone. It's for about 1 in 10 people.
if that. All right, my little piece then before we just get straight into spoilers.
Mhm.
I thought Super was very funny. I think it's I don't know if it's as funny. It might be as funniest. But some stuff is just so hilarious to me in those first 2 acts. The third act is really when it started to lose me, and I feel like it kind of loses itself. And it's definitely like the kind of, to me it's like immature, almost like a juvenile. It's probably the better word. The kind of humor that he goes for, sometimes I feel like is unnecessary, and I don't. When it comes to like slurs and stuff like that, for me, it has to like really fit in the context of the character and the story being told there. And I think both in Slither's still a little less so, but it is there. But definitely in Super throughout, there's just like that kind of meanness to it, which granted fits in with the very mean world that Super takes place in, the mean real world. But I don't feel like some things don't serve as much of a purpose. They're just there to be like, ooh.
No, I definitely get that. Out of... Go ahead.
Super, I'd give it like 2.5.
Okay.
It doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't follow through. We have to get into spoilers really to really justify anything.
Yeah. I'll say I'll give it a 2.5 as well, if only because it is incredibly crass at times in just sort of breathtaking ways.
Yeah.
And there's just no getting over that. And also I do think that the ending kind of does chicken out just a little bit. So with that out of the way, jumping into spoilers. So the moment that it turned for me was the moment that you hit the line butter scene, and it's broad daylight, and he clubs this guy who just cut in line in the head. And then we get this like 2-3 second shot of like the aftermath in broad daylight, you know, in this street. You just see it, and suddenly the graphic violence kind of really starts to take like a very different turn, where instead of it being almost splat sticky funny kind of humor almost into like
it is legitimately shocking.
Yeah.
it is like mouth agape. It is like mouth agape. You know, and it kind of, this is where he attempts all these things of like, you know, for lack of a better term again, like dissecting the superhero genre and the superhero story and everything, because now it can enter into like, oh, like again, this is something that could happen, you know, if someone were to just go around beating up criminals, they could inadvertently kill one, and in this case even better, you know, kill one just by being like annoyed, you know, like there's someone who it's always arguable whether the other people, you know, even like the rapists or the other people that he beats up deserve to be clubbed with a with a wrench. But you know, this in particular, like he's a jerk, but you obviously cannot just go smack some dude square in the head,
and then he turns
in the face,
and he hits his girlfriend right in the face as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And this followed later, you know, when he shoots someone, where that he gets in a scuffle with two other guys, and a gun is dropped, and I think the other guy is unarmed. Like or at least the fight is clearly over. This is when Sean Gunn gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
The fight seems like clearly over, and he, you know, then he shoots him.
Yeah. Then he's, you know, even horrified by, you know, Elliot Page's performance. This is one of the most memorable Elliot Page performances you'll ever see in your entire life.
I think it's genuinely my favorite in a movie that I honestly don't recommend that much. I don't know. Again, it's a very specific person, but we'll find something in this that they like. But if you're just a huge Elliot Page fan, then this is absolutely an insane character.
Well,
and it's cool because it's not that way right off the bat.
No. And like this for me, I was talking with my wife about it. This for me is probably pretty close to how like Joker and Harley Quinn are supposed to almost feel on a certain level. She's supposed to come across as like, you know, incredibly normal, this character that Elliot plays. Libby, I
think.
Okay. So the Libby character, she's meant to come across as like this very tame comic book store worker. And the moment that she starts interacting with Frank Darbo's character, the Frank Darbo character, Rainn Wilson's character, the two, like, she just completely comes undone. And Elliot Page leans all the way into how insane this character is.
Yeah, this character like legitimately like screams and cackles. Gets extreme joy out of killing people or genuinely just messing people up.
Yeah.
And besides that, has a lot of other issues. Yeah,
is just truly deranged and is like a pathological liar, you know.
Yeah. Like a almost a gaslighter at times. Like literally goes through like every kind of bargaining. to get what they want.
I honestly see why Elliot Page took the part. Apparently, Rainn Wilson gave the script to him, and he went through it and read it, and apparently, absolutely was like gung ho for doing the part.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I completely see why. It was completely the reversal of everything else that that Elliot had done at the time.
For sure. And going off of that, Rainn Wilson is also fantastic. He's fantastic in everything. I think like everything I see him in, he's just so good. This is definitely a pretty notable performance.
He said apparently that he really wanted to make sure that, because this was right when The Office was popular for him, and he apparently wanted to make sure that no one was feeling like this was Dwight Schrute. And I think that he hits that mark.
Yeah, pretty crazy movie. It ends on like a sentimental note.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know how much of that is earned. I feel parts of it are. I feel other parts of it aren't. I don't understand the Liv Tyler character that much. I don't understand how Kevin Bacon like took her away, because they kind of hint at. I thought the story was kind of be one of those like, oh, he has to learn the harsh lesson. Like she legitimately like doesn't want to be with him, but then they show like, no, actually, legitimately, like this woman is. I guess she was kidnapped and is like kept drugged.
So I think what happened is like she did legitimately leave him, but then she was getting. I think that he realized that she did have a sort of weakness for drugs and alcohol and was kind of exploiting that and using her as a tester of certain things. And so then what ends up happening is, even though they were still together when the guy comes at the end, since he wanted her, Kevin Bacon was willing to give her up for the deal.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, the things proceed from there. But that's kind of what her overall like thing is, I guess. And the whole thing is, she's a former addict, and she still does eventually like leave him. But I agree with you. I think that sentimental ending really comes out of nowhere.
Especially after how deranged the finale is before that.
And I know that,
and
like
that kind of like swing can work. I don't think it does as effectively as it could in this.
No, I think that for me, this probably had some of the issue that you had with Nobody, where it feels like, the third act sort of cleans it up too nicely, right there at the very, very end. And there's no real lingering consequences for this revenge fantasy that ends up getting carried out. That's like a psychotic break that this person has.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is exactly he wants to say with this movie. It feels like he starts to say several things, but I don't feel like they wrap up in a way that like concludes like, what exactly are you concluding here? About vigilantism and male revenge, male power fantasies, and everything he's trying to tackle.
And about people with mental health issues and all of these other things that you kind of bring up. And I know that like the body of the cop got like cleaned up, but like he still should have been like someone should have still noticed that there was a missing cop. Like that's
isn't he like the chief? Is it, you're talking about the Greg Henry character?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't even matter. You're right. Whether he was like a regular cop or not.
And it just sort of completely goes away. Like, I know again that they got rid of the body or whatever, but he still left. There should still be, outstanding paperwork, because he also never took the.
He is hilarious in the scene where the first time he comes to check. Was it Frank's house?
Yeah.
Very funny scene.
No, he's great here as he is in Slither.
And I think Kevin Bacon is fantastic in this also. He's cracking me up like right off the bat. He's playing just like a sleazeball, It doesn't get much more complicated than that. but it's fun. No,
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that a 2.5 is probably fair on that one.
It's interesting, to talk about James Gunn overall. Guardians movies and the Suicide Squad are definitely his best movies. And going back and watching those two, it's interesting to see he definitely matured. I think age definitely helped him. Age, and I guess more experience.
No, for sure. And I think that he ended up really leveling out. And I think that he would even say that he ended up really leveling out and sort of maturing. And that both of these movies came from like a time where I'm not sure that he even now feels as comfortable with who he was
Yeah.
at the time.
There's still like that darker, there's still a bit of edginess, even in Disney movies like Guardians of the Galaxy. It still kind of has some bite to it.
Yeah.
And the Suicide Squad, it gets to all be there, for the most part. And again, like all three, both Guardians movies and the Suicide Squad, tackle a lot of different subjects. But in all three of those movies, I feel like they feel more followed through.
Yeah.
Which is something that I wasn't. Slither, I'm not sure what Slither's about. If not just like a good time. It doesn't have to be about anything, I mean, it might not be. Super is the one that, like I said, goes for a lot, and I feel like can't quite figure it out by the end.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a problem he fixed for himself as a storyteller.
No, undoubtedly. I think that that's all really fair. So for our last bit of the discussion, I thought that I would bring up a little bit of news. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was the final Eternals trailer dropped. Did you watch it?
I have seen clips. I have not watched the whole thing.
It's okay. It does what typical Marvel second trailers do, which is, like explain a lot of the plot. The big thing that this one really sums up is the whole, like, why they haven't been in previous movies before, which is, some ancient rule.
Doesn't it suck when they have to explain that? Like, sometimes I prefer, like, they just, like, don't even worry about it.
Yeah, literally, who gives a rip? They didn't.
Yeah.
They were living their lives. They had other things to do.
It's all good. Sometimes you just gotta go with it. You can have like an in-canon explanation for sure, but like it doesn't, because they made those movies first. I'm sorry. That's why. That's why they didn't help.
But I think it looks good. I'm looking forward to it. They're Richard Madden is Supermaning really hard.
Yeah, I love Chloe Zhao, so
yeah.
It'd be cool to see what she does with a Marvel movie.
The other, of course, bit of news that I wanted to share was the yesterday it was, I guess now, as of recording, the centennial birthday for, if he were with us, Gene Roddenberry, the man that made Star Trek. He would have turned 100. NASA did a big event done in conjunction with the Roddenberry Foundation that was hosted by George Takei, that had some NASA astronauts, and it was a sort of celebration of his life and his legacy and Star Trek's impact on some of the things that get developed today, because Star Trek was so forward thinking with its technology. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up, did you hear about the Val Kilmer thing?
I just know that he has a documentary about him that I think is already out.
Okay. So there's this new Val Kilmer documentary out. Val Kilmer, for those of you who don't know, has been battling cancer in a very serious battle for several years now, and has recently lost the ability to speak. So he went and he wrote a narration script for this documentary, and his son read it, and then they used AI technology to sort of create an audio deepfake overlay on his son's performance to make him sound like Val Kilmer.
Yeah, that's I mean that's cool.
Yeah.
So weird.
It's recently, I think it's contrasted, I think, against a recent bit of news that reminded me of this, which was the Anthony Bourdain controversy over the new documentary there.
Very similar.
Where, for those of you who don't know, the documentarians did, like, it's only, I think, 3 lines of dialogue in the final cut of the film that are AI generated Anthony Bourdain voice, since Anthony Bourdain, of course, is no longer with us. So I think the difference for me here is that Val Kilmer is still alive and was still able to like author the words and choose what was said.
It's the consent. It's the matter of consent. Anthony Bourdain is not here to say you can do that.
Yeah.
And Val Kilmer is, so.
And you can tell me that Bourdain would have wanted it as much as you want, but
Yeah. You know, going off of that, have you heard the Bruce Willis news?
no.
Okay, so Bruce Willis has been licensing, I guess, his like deep fakes of him for like Russian commercials or something like that, or like some like Russian film projects, like straight up pure artificial Bruce Willis performance.
Oh no!
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff.
Bruce, no.
And of course, there's all the jokes that are like they're livelier than his performances have been in years. You know,
I'm sure. Well, when you're at the stage that you're like, yeah, I'm comfortable with just giving my face away.
Yeah.
Fuck it. You know.
Yeah, and you hear there are like stories of people who have like made movies recently with him, and they're just like, yeah, I never saw the dude. He'd come in and like do his bit, and then like peace.
Yeah. Well, apparently he wanted like $3 million for 2 days of shooting for Expendables 3.
Yeah.
Or two, I think it was, and that's why he's out in. Or no, he's there in 2. It's 3 that he's out. He was apparently wanted for like, 2 days of shooting, and it was $3 million was his asking fee, and they were like, we're just gonna get Harrison Ford.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just doing whatever he wants, I guess.
I guess.
I don't know. Weird guy.
Yeah.
I don't know him personally. I doubt I ever will.
I don't know him personally, and based on the outside, the man is an enigma to me.
Pretty strange. So it's so bizarre. He was a pretty straightforward celebrity and actor for what he was. To me, Bruce Willis wasn't very complicated. Now it's very weird.
Yeah, it's super weird now. I don't get the man even by any metric of understanding him, and I don't understand where the actor went either.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him, I guess.
I think that he would be. I think that he would yell at me if I asked him that question.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like constantly intimidating as well.
Yeah, and apparently, according to at least Kevin Smith, I guess he likes to cultivate that atmosphere as well.
They're fantastic.
Yeah,
everyone works best under fear, as everyone knows. It produces just the best results.
Incredible results, really.
Yep.
Well, Nick, would you like to share some picks of the week, or would you like to share some of what you've been doing independently on some of your other sites and stuff like that?
I'll do a little bit of both.
Sure.
I'll talk about some movies I saw recently. First off, there's The Green Knight, which I liked a lot. One of those movies that utterly confused me.
Great
throughout. Gorgeous looking, brilliantly acted. I needed like 2 days to think on it, and then I was like, I kind of really like this. So Green Knight is great. Watch it wherever you can. I don't care. You can pirate it for all I care. I hope that you would, if it's safe for you to go see it in the theater. That's how I'd recommend it. That's how I recommend all movies. But
I think it's about to come out on digital.
Okay, well then don't worry about it. There's COVID about. So okay, Green Knight, The Suicide Squad, we already talked about, saw it, pretty good. How about I watched a movie called Greenland.
Okay.
It's a disaster movie starring Gerard Butler that came out last year. I love disaster movies so much.
Was this one good?
And Greenland's pretty good, dude.
Okay.
Greenland's about there's like a meteor shower, basically like a bunch of comets are coming to hit Earth, begin striking Earth. And there's nothing they can do about it. So it's kind of like these people have like knowledge that they're all going to die. They're like basically there's going to be like small like comets that will wipe out whole cities. And then eventually like a planet killing one will hit. So everyone panics trying to find like a safe place, and the government issues like passage, like, you know, it shows up on these people's phones and on their TV at home and everything. It tells them to go to like the nearest Air Force base and you'll be taken to safety. And they do this based on like their occupations, I guess. Doesn't really matter. So there's like a conflict. You have like a chunk of the population that's been chosen, and like it's not able to be kept a secret. That are like in safe passage, and all the rest of the people are just like, well, you know, I want to live too, obviously. It's pretty harrowing stuff. Gerard Butler, his wife, and their kid, and just like a lot of bad stuff happens to them. That's not really in relation to like the greater disaster. If you're looking for like, you know, like the comets wiping out cities and big kind of spectacle, there is that, but it's not the focus. It's not the predominant thing. It's more about the experiences of these characters, like in the last days of the planet.
Kind of like the later part of like 28 Days Later, where it becomes like them with the military base and that kind of thing, and it's less about the zombie horde.
Yeah, it's more of like a road trip movie.
Okay.
It's so some parts are kind of like generic, or, you know, I see where this is going, blah blah blah, but very good. Gerard Butler is great in it. I think a lot of people forget Gerard Butler is a pretty fantastic actor.
Yeah, I think it's because
he has a bad ratio of like good movies and not so great movies.
Yeah. And a lot of his worst stuff is the stuff that gets the most publicity. Exactly.
Yeah. His blockbusters, like his smash hits, are like wah. But yeah, it's a good movie. I'd recommend that.
Okay.
And what I'm doing in my other life, just go to notfest.com or go to ndelgadillo.com or both, and also discussingfilm.com. Read all my stuff there.
And
I'm always reviewing movies and doing a weekly streaming thing. Guide.
I'll make sure to put links to all of Nick's sites and everything in the show notes and that sort of thing as well.
For sure, folks.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm trying to remember when I recorded with Henry last. It was right before he left. I don't know if I brought up that I had watched Friday the 13th. I watched Friday the 13th. If I already mentioned that last week, I apologize.
It's okay. How exciting. I like that movie.
Yeah, the first Friday the 13th is great. It was Lauren's
movie.
first time watching it. She really liked it.
Solid stuff.
Yeah. And we watched it on Friday the 13th. That was why we watched it, was for the holiday. And then we also watched Infinity War recently for a date night, and it was a great time. I still really enjoy Infinity War a lot. I think it's great.
There's here in Charlotte, everybody, there's a place called Heist Brewery. And they used to have like a buffet brunch. They still do brunch, but not a buffet anymore for obvious reasons. But it used to be a brunch buffet. And I'd go there pretty often with my parents. And they would always be doing a double feature of Black Panther and Infinity War. It would just be on throughout me eating. It's fantastic. Sunday morning, Black Panther Infinity War double feature.
I mean, why not?
It'd be on. Sometimes it'd be like a live band. plane, and but on the screens is the
You're
Battle of
seeing,
Wakanda.
yeah,
Both battles of Wakanda.
you're watching the anime fight that is the Thanos versus everyone on
sure.
Titan fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great. I think it's such a fun movie. In some ways, I think it might be my favorite of the Avengers films on a certain level, just because it is like,
Dude, it's so fun because that movie just goes. Dude.
yeah,
It's
it never lets up. It's not a slow movie in the slightest.
so much fun, so cool.
Yeah.
A lot of characters get highlighted that don't normally get highlighted.
Yeah, and the pairings of characters are great. It's just a really well done movie.
Gorgeous looking.
Yeah, great movie.
So gorgeous looking.
And then we also rewatched Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I'll write like a letterboxd review that probably fleshes out more of my opinion on it, but essentially my general thought is this: like, no knock on Peyton Reed. I think Peyton Reed is a great director. I've seen some of his other stuff that isn't superhero stuff, like Bring It On and Down with Love, and I really enjoy him. But I think that a lot of that first movie was Edgar Wright, and this has a lot of sequelitis, where we break up the couple again, and we repeat some of the gags again, and we do some of the things again. And I also feel like it lacks some of the creativity with the usage of the ants. It does some really cool stuff with the shrinky tech, which is fun.
Yeah,
but I feel like,
and now growing on top of it.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. It doesn't feel quite as creative, again, because we already know a lot of it. Doesn't get weird enough. It's one that should have started to get weird, because I guess the third one, Quantum Mania, is
going to be wild, apparently. Yeah,
it's going to be crazy for all we know. We'll see. But definitely it feels a little more generic than the first one.
Yeah. And honestly, I was talking with my wife about it, and I think that the way that you fix that movie is you essentially have to make it to where Carapadian, this was my idea, Carapadian is already a security contract they've secured, and that's the Walton Goggins character. And they're now having to heist the same thing that Ghost is trying to heist, and we just do like a heist off. We already did a one-person heist. In the second movie, if you wanted to do like true sequel rules, then we just should have doubled down and made it like a good guy heist team and a bad guy heist team. And
yeah, for sure.
Focused up the narrative a little bit more. It just seems a little unfocused, like just across the board. The hell is any of it about?
That's what the post-credit scene is like.
Yeah.
so good. So good.
Yeah.
That killed in the theater.
Yeah. And like, I don't dislike it. It's very like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all that I've watched lately. Oh, I mean, I watched What If. I've been watching What If. I haven't
seen What If yet.
I prefer the first episode to the second one, if only because I think the second one, for me, my big issue that I have is that the character that it's, centered on, and not to give you, I guess, anything too specific, I feel like they don't really grow what it would have been like for that character to grow up in that environment organically.
I see.
Of the what if scenario that they postulate. It's like, oh, we essentially still got the exact same character, but here.
That's it's funny that's partly what I saw people complain about the first episode also. It's like, what if Peggy Carter was Captain America, or Captain Britain in this case?
Yeah.
It's like essentially it's the same character as like Steve Rogers would have been, but it's just Peggy. I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't watch it.
I mean,
but yeah, I see what you're saying about the second episode.
We can talk more about, like, we can do a whole what if episode at some point, but for me, I much prefer the first to the second.
Okay.
That's about it for me. Do you have anything else that you want to share with the listeners?
Wear a mask. Get vaccinated.
There it is. Give me that filthy stuff.
Yeah, just stay safe. To the best of your ability, folks.
I second that fully.
We're not all in this together, but we're also not completely alone, I don't think. So, you know.
Yeah. No, I
Day
agree
by
with that. I
day.
like that.
Day by day, everybody.
Well, if there's anything that I guess would like to say, I would like to speak to one dear listener, I hope, who's out there right now. Henry, I miss you. Come back. But beyond that,
This
it was a weird first time to sort of host without Henry. I'm sure that I'm
Sure,
going to
yeah.
get more into the hang of it. Please send us questions. If you sent us one and I missed it, I apologize. I'm still kind of learning some of the ropes of managing it all on my own.
You did great.
Thank you. And so we'll be next week bringing you, hopefully I need to double check with everything to make sure that it's all set up. But next week we actually should be doing a special Shaun of the Dead episode where we're going to have writer Clark Collis joining us, who is he's got a book coming out called You've Got Red on You, which is a written history of the making of Shaun of the Dead from the people that made Shaun of the Dead.
That's cool.
And yeah, it's going to be a big deal. Edgar Wright has read it. He apparently loves it. So I reached out to Clark, and hopefully we're going to be able to have him on the show next week.
Nice.
And if not that, then you can go and you can check out on all of our social media the content calendar that I recently posted. And if it isn't Clark Collis's You've Got Red on You, then it'll be kind of new, where we're going to do the old Candyman movie and the Adjustment Bureau. So
That's an interesting pair.
yeah, it's for the upcoming Candyman movie and Reminiscing.
Yeah,
The
whatever it's called. Reminiscence.
the Lisa Joy movie that's about a guy who uses technology to get to to figure out the mystery of this woman that he has lost or whatever. And so I was like, oh, that feels like a very Philip K. Dick story. So I was like, let's do Adjustment Bureau. So it's Candyman and Adjustment Bureau.
Very nice.
Kind of like the movies. So join us next week. Follow us on social media. If you haven't, give us a like, give us a follow. The Film Buds. We're pretty much the Film Buds everywhere, or the Film Buds podcast. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.